we're going to do a review of your portfolio for college admission. So I'm going to start out by just discussing some overall general comments about your entire portfolio, talk about some specific strategies that you can employ to improve your portfolio. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to talk about each piece individually and give you specific advice about how to improve each piece. And then we'll summarize the review at the very end with some thoughts as you move forward with your work. Okay, so the first thing I would say about your portfolio is that generally you're in pretty good shape. There's a lot of things that you have that are working really well for you. The first thing is that you have a very good range of different kinds of art media represented. On top of that, you even have a number of mixed media pieces, which I think is really excellent because most students at this stage are really kind of isolating one media to an individual piece. And the fact that you have a couple pieces where you're taking multiple medias and working them together into a single work is really terrific, and you've done a pretty good job of that, and I'll talk about that later. The second thing is that you're very strong in color. I can see from the wide range of pieces that you're able to use color in a number of different media, and also that your color sensibility is quite different from piece to piece. That diversity is really important. For example, you have this acrylic painting here, which is extremely vibrant, highly saturated colors. You have pieces like this self-portrait, I'm guessing, which has more kind of muted pieces in terms of color. This piece here is more a monochromatic piece with little touches of color. And then on top of that, you also have a number of black and white pieces. And so that's really terrific that you have such a good range of different ways of handling color throughout your entire portfolio. The other thing that I recognize is that you have excellent command of details, especially like this colored pencil piece, this self-portrait over here. You're somebody who really knows how to get into the itty-bitty tiny areas of the individual artworks, and so clearly I can see from those pieces that you're very detail-oriented. You obviously had a lot of patience. I can see in many of the pieces that you have an excellent work ethic, that you're really somebody who's able to sustain your attention on a piece over a long period of time. And that's also a really good asset for you in your portfolio, because what I see typically in a lot of portfolios is people aren't spending enough time on their pieces, and that they're not really bringing the pieces to a full resolution. You've got a couple pieces in your portfolio that I'll talk about that I don't think are fully resolved, but in general, a lot of the pieces do have a full sense of resolution, which is really terrific. Okay, couple things I'm going to suggest that you improve overall in the entire portfolio. The first thing is that you have one 3D piece, which I think is good to include, but you've got to reshoot the photographs. The photographs of the 3D piece that you have are very poor. They make it difficult to see the sculpture very well, and I'll get into specifics later. You have three pieces that I think you should just get rid of flat out. I think the two t-shirt designs down here, the National Honor Society poster, I think those three pieces are visibly very weak compared to the other pieces in your portfolio. And I know that the RISD application is coming up very soon, but in my opinion, I think that's enough time to do 3 new pieces to replace those 3 pieces, because those works, and I'll get into more specifics later, they really jump out as being weak moments in your portfolio, so I would get rid of those. I'd like to see more charcoal drawing in your portfolio. It seems like the vast majority of the drawing work that I see in your portfolio is pretty much all graphite or colored pencil, some form of pencil. And while I said earlier that I think you have obviously a very strong command of detail, I also see that you're very tight and that your drawing style is very rigid, and that you're not really loosening up and getting more rigorous with the drawing process. And I think that if you were to use a material like charcoal or chalk pastel, that would really give you the opportunity to just be more rigorous with the drawing process. Right now you're very conservative, and a lot of your drawings feel more like renderings. They don't really read as more kind of expressive pieces. So I think that's something you could work on, and I'll tell you some strategies later for how you could do that. I also think you got to work from life more. It seems like the vast majority of the pieces in your portfolio have been done from photographs. There's a couple pieces that I think do look like they were drawn from life, but for example, this self-portrait, I don't doubt for a second was done from a photograph. You know, this piece as well, some of the, like this self-portrait down here with graphite, I think was obviously done with a photograph. And I think that's a big problem. I think that when you draw from photographs, and I'll send you a link to an article that I wrote later, not only does it get you to accumulate a lot of really bad drawing habits, but it also creates drawings that, again, look very rigid and sort of stale. They look more like copies of something than they do like an actual interpretation, which is what a drawing should be. So I would really recommend that you stop drawing from photographs and you start drawing from life, because when you draw from life, there are all sorts of advantages. I know drawing from life is harder for a lot of people. It's more work, but the results are so much better, and you really are teaching yourself to see when you draw from life. And when you draw from a photograph, that's not happening. Drawing from a photograph, it's almost like you're turning yourself into a human Xerox machine. You're just copying it. You're not really doing anything artistic. So I'll send you some articles that talk about the importance of drawing from life and what are kind of the problems with drawing from photographs. You have a couple pieces that I think you can work on more. I think a couple pieces, you know, another 2 or 3 hours would probably fix them up. And that's a good place to be, because, you know, I've had some students, I look at their portfolio and I have to tell them, you know, you got to start over. And you're definitely not in that area. But you have a couple pieces like this charcoal piece over here, this self-portrait over here with the collage and the map. Those pieces feel really incomplete to me. I think that you just need to work on them a little bit more, and I'll tell you what to do in those pieces in a few minutes. The other thing, going back to these two pieces, is you have a lot of drawings that have kind of glaring areas of white background. You got to be really careful about white backgrounds, because they tend to, number one, make your pieces look really incomplete. And number two, they just make your pieces look really empty. And it's a chronic problem that I see across the board in all high school portfolios, is people just don't bother with the background. They spend all their time working on the subject, like this piece just focusing on the face, this piece just focusing on the object. They leave these blank white backgrounds, and those are really no good. Now, you don't have that in every piece. Like, for example, this painting here has no white background at all. So this piece really looks resolved. But I think you got to reconsider that. So these two pieces I'm going to recommend that you work on more. Okay, so let's go through and let's talk about the individual pieces and what you can do to work these. This piece I think is very strong. I think that it was done in, you know, colored pencil, and this is one of those pieces, as I mentioned earlier, that I think really shows your work ethic. It really shows your ability to sustain your attention on a single piece. The amount of detail is really extraordinary. And, you know, I'm guessing it probably was done from a photograph, which I'm not thrilled about, but it is one of your stronger compositions. For example, I like the fact that the flowers in the foreground, like these three here, I like the fact that these are so large, and that as you push further back into the background, the flowers get smaller and smaller. And so just that one shift of scale in your object really gives this piece a strong sense of depth. So we really feel that these flowers in the foreground are kind of coming out at us, and these are kind of pushing backwards. And so that's kind of the thing about this piece that I really recognize, is that it has a sense of depth, despite the fact that it's a single object that's repeated over and over again. I think the contrast is quite good, this kind of deep, rich magenta purple color against the vibrant saturated yellow color, and then these little bits of green that kind of break up the warm colors in here are kind of a breath of fresh air in this piece. So this is, I think, one of your better pieces in that it's totally resolved. There isn't a shred of doubt in my mind that it's complete, and it's well composed, and you have a very good command of your material. So this is a good piece. I would keep this piece. Okay, so this piece is a mixture of graphite and Prismacolor, and the best part of this piece for me is really the color in the object, the fish thing, the metal fish. And, you know, I'm a little bit on the fence about the mixed media in this particular piece. I know I'd said earlier that I thought it was an asset in some of your pieces, but this is not one of those pieces. I think that the kind of harsh separation of the graphite and the colored pencil isn't so great. I think when you do mixed media pieces, you really want to integrate the media so they become a sort of fluid language that runs together. In this case, they're so separate that it makes the graphite area look so dull and kind of stale. And then this is so brilliant and so noticeable that it really kind of makes the graphite area look really boring by comparison. So it's kind of a situation where you have two components that look good by themselves, but when you kind of throw them together like this, they don't seem to have a lot of relationship to each other. And so that's what you gotta remind yourself of, is that drawing is really about relationships. How does this area relate to this area? And in this case, they really kind of don't. And so I think that this is a piece you could work on more. I would suggest maybe some little hints of color. You know, maybe the color is spreading out from here. I think that's the way to integrate it, because for me there's no bridge between the color area and the graphite. The composition I think is quite good. I think the fact that you have a lot of these diagonals, these big areas of shadow are quite good because they create a good sense of contrast. You have these bright highlights, some beautiful grays, you have some really excellent you know, kind of moments where you segue really slowly where the black kind of dissolves into the white. I think that's very good. I kind of want to see more of this pattern. I'm not sure what you're looking at, but I like that it appears here. I like that it appears here, but it seems a little strange that it doesn't appear at all in this lower section. It seems like we need this pattern in at least two other sections down here for that to make sense. Right now, these two patterns, they kind of come out of nowhere and they seem sort of like anomalies. So I might add them in a couple other places. You know, maybe you didn't actually see them there, but you could kind of cheat a little bit and fix that in your composition. But I think that's the main problem in this piece, is just that you have two really good sections, but they don't really speak to each other very much. It's almost like this fish was sort of cut out of another drawing and just kind of collaged on top of this drawing, and so they don't have a lot of relationship. So this piece I really think you could work on more. I think in another 2 hours you could have it wrapped up. So I would just grab some colored pencils, you know, invent some color. Just, you know, it doesn't have to be full out color the way it is here, but I think even if we had like a little hint of green here, or a little hint of green, or a little hint of yellow, just something to kind of form a bridge from the color section into the black and white section, I think would be really important for this piece. Okay, so this is an acrylic painting on canvas, and this piece is terrific. I love that. Number one, you're so much looser in this piece than you are in the other pieces. And a lot of the other pieces, your drawing style is extremely tight. You're really getting sort of caught up in a lot of details in the other areas. And this piece, I don't feel that's the case. I think this piece has a lively, vibrant energy to it. I like the composition. I like the fact that there are these diagonals, that it's not a straight-on composition. And clearly, you know, you're using more than just a brush. I mean, I'm guessing this is probably a palette knife painting. And I think the fact that you used a palette knife as opposed to the brush was really critical in this piece, because, you know, with a palette knife, you can't be precise and you can't be tight and you can't render tiny, tiny details. You really do have to be a lot more energetic with the way that you use it. You have to be a lot more, you know, kind of rigorous in terms of the way that you do it. So I think that's terrific. An artist that I would recommend that you look at, and I'll send you a link to this later, is the British contemporary painter Frank Auerbach. He did a number of portraits done in oil that are extremely lively, really super thick, you know, kind of gritty, textured paint. I think you would love his paintings. So I'll send you a link to that. So I like this piece a lot. Also, I think the color is very well done. I think the fact that you have really deep darks here, this deep blue color is terrific. You have the bright whites, you've got the highly saturated red. So it's a good balance, because you have some colors that are super bright and intense, and you have others like this kind of muddy yellow ochre, this kind of dark blue over here. Those are really terrific. There's a couple things about this piece that I would fix. I think it is worth doing this. I know it's a little thing, but you know, this is your shot to apply, so you might as well put everything into it. The eyes, I think, are problematic, because they're the one spot in this portrait where I feel you did tighten up, where you did sort of stop looking for a little bit. Like when I look at the mouth and I look at the nose, The mouth and the nose, they look really sculptural. Like I really believe they're three-dimensional volume. The eyes, on the other hand, they almost look like you painted what you thought you saw as opposed to what you really saw. I mean, nobody's eyes really look like this. They're really flat, really outliney. You got to really treat the eyes the same way that you treated the nose and the mouth. So I would advocate you just go in and you fix these eyes, make them a little bit more suggestive. Don't try to work so hard to articulate them so clearly. So I would work on that, but this is a great piece. I think it really shows your energy, and I'm sort of wishing you had more pieces like this for that reason. Okay, so this is a portrait, and it's done in colored pencil. And, you know, again, my sort of initial problem with this piece is that it's obviously drawn from a photograph because you can't get this level of detail posing from life. So, you know, I think that's kind of a problem. There's some gorgeous details. I think especially the shading in the face is really nicely done. The fact that we have shadow on the left-hand side, the highlights over here, makes sense to me that the hand would be this detailed because it is coming right out at us, and so we do expect to see that kind of level of detail. I like the shirt, but I almost wonder if it's calling too much attention to itself, like especially on the right-hand side where you have the plaid shirt behind the hand. I feel like I see the shirt before I see the hand, and I think a lot of that is the color. The fact that the blue is so intense and vibrant, it kind of forces me to see the plaid pattern before I see the hand, but that doesn't make a lot of sense because the hand is what's really jumping out at us. So I think that my recommendation would be for you to either make some more vibrant colors in the hand, like get some juicier yellows, some brighter pinks or something, just more intense colors in the hand, and maybe tone down the blue, like maybe just layer a little bit of gray or even a little bit of orange or brown would kind of cut back on the intensity of that blue. I don't mind the shirt as much on the left-hand side. I think here you've got some purples in here, but I think here it becomes really problematic. So I might work on that. I'm not thrilled with the background. It seems really strange that you have this kind of border back here. It's a little weird. I think you're better off getting rid of this border. I think you could probably just fill as a color. It's also weird that you have this kind of blaring white back here. I think you'd be better off just filling the background a solid color, or maybe doing a gradient, like maybe it starts dark and then gets lighter down here towards the bottom. But I think the background's the biggest problem in this piece. Like, I like the diagonal of the hand. I like this diagonal. The hand is very dynamic. The placement of it's very good, but the background's really kind of killing me right now because it has this kind of rigidity that for me really contradicts what you have going on in the composition. Like, I like the fact that the arm is cropped over here. One other thing, I'm not really sure why this is empty. This is a little weird because you have the hair, you have the thumb and the clothing, and my sort of logical reaction would be that the body would continue here. And the reason I think that is because that's really the only spot of the body that's sort of mysteriously absent. So I think you got to be consistent. You know, if you had another spot, like maybe if you had an arm that was disappearing, or maybe the shoulder on the right-hand side, then I think I'd believe it. But I think the fact that this really just disappears into nothing is a little bit strange. It feels like a sore thumb. So I would get rid of that. This piece is fixable. I think this piece, you know, like another 2 hours or something. There's some good elements to it, but the background and this kind of disappearing thing is a little bit strange. So I think I would work on that. I like that you have a charcoal drawing in here, but I do think that your technique is awfully rigid for charcoal. You know, the great thing about charcoal is that you can be so rigorous with it, you can smudge with it, and the thing that I really notice is that you're not really using your erasers very much. It seems like you're just using the charcoal in an additive manner. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to send you a link to an article that I wrote that talks about all of the different kinds of erasers that you can use. You can use a white plastic eraser, an eraser stick, you can use a kneaded eraser, and erasers are drawing tools. They're not just there to get rid of mistakes. You really need to use it like a drawing tool. And what I see in this piece is that you're not doing that. You're kind of just using the charcoal, just adding it to the paper. And, you know, if you take the eraser and you lifted these highlights or you soften some of these areas, it just sort of seems like, looking at this drawing, that you're kind of walking on eggshells a little bit with your drawing. And I want to see you just get more lively. I want to see that energy that I saw in that acrylic painting a few slides back. So I'd focus on that. The other problem I have with this piece is this cast shadow, I think, is not good. I think, you know, this area, obviously you spent a lot of time observing the highlights and the sheen of the corkscrew, and you have some beautiful gray marks, some lovely details in here. And then this shadow, it just is so harsh. I mean, it almost looks like you cut out a sheet of black paper and collaged it on the paper and then drew the charcoal on top. And so this is in such a totally different language than the way you're drawing this, that again, they don't seem like they fit together at all. You know, if you really look at a cast shadows are never this rigid. I mean, there might be some cast shadows where, when you're really close to the object in the light, that you would have a hard edge, but that hard edge would always dissolve into something else. So for example, it might start sharp and then it would get kind of more dissolved and get really kind of fuzzy and blurry the further out you get. So I don't believe that you could possibly have a shadow that was this crisp and harsh throughout the whole thing. I'm guessing you probably didn't do this from life, and that's probably the problem. If you set up a corkscrew and you take a desk lamp and you lamp it, there's no way you would get a shadow like this. And so I think if you can, I would recommend getting the corkscrew, getting a desk lamp, putting the lamp so it lights the corkscrew, and then really observe carefully how you could do that. I think you could fix this. I think this piece is like another 2 hours. You could fix up those shadows. You know, if you take a kneaded eraser and you blur out the edges, it's going to look so much better. I mean, this is so harsh and conservative. It's really killing the background. I like the composition. The placement's good. I'm not happy with all the white, though. The white, again, is so kind of glaringly, obviously unfinished. And that's where the shadows will help you, because if you blur out the shadows coming around this side, then that's going to make the shadow kind of relate to the background a lot better. And right now, the white is really problematic. So this piece is on its way. It just needs a lot of kind of major adjustments, and you really got to work from life, because my guess is that maybe the shadow was made up. It doesn't look like it was observed from anything. It doesn't look like it was observed from a photograph or from life. This, I think you were looking at something, probably a photograph, but it's really worth it to set it up, because this is a good piece. It's on its way, but it needs some work. Okay, so this piece, I'm guessing, was probably an assignment that you did in art class, because it seems very structured and specific. So I think the only reservation I have about this piece is it doesn't seem like your work. It really looks like an assignment. And I mean, it looks like something you really worked hard on. I mean, this doesn't look like a piece that could come together that quickly. And, you know, your interpretation of the tiger image is quite different from piece to piece. And so that's kind of what I think is the asset behind this piece, is that it does really look like you thought through, you know, the different periods of art history and how to interpret that. So I would keep this piece. It's just, my one reservation is it just looks so obviously like an art assignment. It doesn't look like there's a lot of kind of your personality or interpretation in the piece, but it does show a lot of different media. Like, for example, I like the design of this piece down here. It looks like it was done in pen and ink. You know, I like this piece up here. It's got a nice kind of warm look to it. This piece, I think, is a little weak. I'm guessing it was probably supposed to be Impressionism or something like that. But I think my problem with this area is that the colors are so kind of literal. Like, the orange is orange, the green is green. And, you know, if you look at an Impressionist painting, like if you look at a Monet painting, it's shocking to see the kinds of colors he puts into something that you think would just be green. You know, if you look at one of his paintings, you know, some of the trees that you think should be just green have pinks and oranges and reds in them. And so I think that's the one reservation I have about this piece, is that the colors are so literal. You know, the sky is blue, the, you know, trees are green, the tigers are orange. You know, if you were to work on this piece more, I think in about an hour, you could just make the colors more sophisticated. Right now, they're a little bit obvious. Okay, so this piece, I like that you're mixing the materials around, the fact that you're incorporating gold leaf. I like that you're using pastel and charcoal, but I have problems with the figure because the figure's really mushy looking. I'm guessing this was done from a photograph. I don't see how this could possibly have been drawn from life, but he almost looks like he's made out of pudding or something, which is a little strange because, if you think about a human torso, I mean, this almost looks like it was drawn from a photograph of a Greek sculpture or something, but a human torso really should have a lot more kind of density to it. I think especially the hand is so kind of gooey in a way that I kind of have problems with it because it doesn't have a lot of structure. The lighting's a little bit unclear. The lighting is better on the torso. On the face, I think it doesn't make a lot of sense that you would have highlights over here. If you really have a highlight like this on the edge of the face, you wouldn't have highlights on this side. So I think if you were to work on this piece more, I'd intensify the highlights on this side, I'd downplay the highlights on this side. The hand needs a lot of work. I think it's very confusing what this is. I'm not sure where the edge of the palm is. Like, I can't tell if this is the edge of the palm or if this is the elbow, or if this is the bottom of the palm. I'm guessing this is the edge of the palm and this is the bottom of the elbow, but it's really confusing. It looks like this is the entire palm, and so you got to do something with this because it's a weird position. It's a foreshortened arm, and so I know that with foreshortening, things tend to look kind of strange and distorted, but I'd really work on this. So this piece I think you could keep. I know you're late in the deadline, you only got a few days, so if you don't have enough time, I think you could keep this piece, but I would really work on it some more. I also think the background's a little bit too much. I think you're calling too much attention to the background. I would downplay the background and get more kind of gold in the body, actually. I feel like the torso and the clothing are so separate, I want to kind of integrate them more. This piece I'm interested in just as a mixed media piece. I like the fact that you're collaging the map, that you're doing the ink and the ballpoint pen, but again, it's a really incomplete composition. I mean, over 50% of this piece is just plain white background. So I would recommend that you really beef up the map aspect of this piece. I would love to see the map part of the piece 10 times what it is right now. Right now you're kind of giving me these little shreds of the map, which are not that interesting. I don't see very much of it. I'd love to see a huge background area filled with the map. This seems like a lot of detail invested in the eyes, but not a lot in the hair. The hair is such a great opportunity for you to do something with. So this piece I think is about 20% there. I think there's a long ways to go with it. It's a good start, but I think you got to work on it way more. It's just so much glaring white space. Be nice to get some areas of black shape in here, especially in the hair. So you can certainly work this, but it needs more time. This piece I like a lot just because it's using the wooden blocks, that there's the wood burning aspect of it, the oil pastel, the acrylic, the gold leaf. It's one of your more inventive pieces as far as the media goes. I'm kind of less interested in the white paint. I like the wood burning more. I kind of wish there was more wood burning actually. Compositionally, I'm not thrilled with it. I feel like the figure's just sort of dead center. Stuck in the middle. There's pretty much nothing happening in the background. If you have time to work this piece, I might take the wood burning tool and add some kind of background, whatever you want it to be. It's just that there's nothing happening back here. Everything's kind of isolated to the figure, and so I think I would work on that. The white paint, I think I might minimize. It seems like there's an awful lot of it, and really the interesting part of this piece is the wood burning and the wooden blocks. That's the part you really want to emphasize, so I might downplay the acrylic paint. Okay, so this piece I like in the woven canvas aspect, the alternating pieces, the really bright, color scheme that you have. It's a little smeary. I sort of wish that you would loosen up a little bit more and kind of show us your strokes. It seems like you're a little bit too happy to smudge everything to death. Like, for example, I think, the mouth is a little bit picky. I think I would just kind of loosen up. You got a lot of really sharp edges in this piece, so I would cut back on that. and just be more rigorous. You know, I saw from that acrylic painting and some of the other pieces that you have the ability to do that. You know, for me, the most interesting part of this piece is the marks on the face, this yellow area. I'm much less interested in the nose and the mouth. The nose and the mouth, I think, look kind of overly fussy in a way. I think this piece would look great if you had more of these shapes on the face, more of this yellow. You know, it seems like you spent so much time working and rendering the face that you kind of forgot about this area, which is the most compelling part of this piece. So I would take another hour or two, add more of these, and really kind of go crazy. It seems like you're just getting started in this piece. So I'd do more with this. This piece I would get rid of. I think that the subject matter is a little bit cheesy. It's a little bit silly looking. You know, it's obviously not drawn from life. I mean, it's fine to do, you know, pieces that are more imaginative or more surrealistic, but I can see that you didn't really spend a lot of time finding good references, and so therefore the body looks really stiff. The hands look kind of strange and wooden. I think just the subject matter alone, you know, the coat and the, you know, F shapes that are from the violin are not very good. The background, I think, is a nightmare. I think it just looks like you splashed paint just to kind of fill the space. I just don't think this is a well-worked piece. I think it's one of your weakest pieces. I would recommend that you remove it and replace it with something else. I mean, your watercolor technique is fine. You know, the way that you're painting is fine. You're doing well mixing the colors, and you're getting some good contrast as you have in the other pieces. But the subject matter and I think the background are so problematic that this piece for me is kind of fundamentally flawed. Like there isn't a lot you can do to improve it. I think you'd better off starting something else. Okay, so this piece here I think is one of your better compositions. I like the fact that things are cropped, and your use of the oil pastel I think is pretty interesting. I like the fact that it's so textured, that there's different kinds of colors, like the really bright saturated oranges and yellows, but then I like this kind of muddy kind of puke green back here. I like this little edge of darkness down here at the bottom that offers really good contrast, and the really bright white in here. So what I like about this piece, it just seems so much more loose, a lot more inventive, and it seems like you're more concerned with the entire composition. A lot of the other pieces you tend to kind of pick at certain areas, and here it seems like you're really telling me that you're just as engaged with this as you are with this. So this kind of equal attention to all the areas. So this is a great piece. I would definitely keep this. This piece and also this piece as well, I would get rid of these two pieces. I think it's a problem that they're, not only are the designs weak, but the fact that it's a mock-up of a t-shirt, it's like a, you know, not such a good quality mock-up, and it makes it look kind of thrown together. Compared to the other pieces in your portfolio, I just don't think that they hold their own. They really kind of pull the quality of your entire portfolio down. So I would get rid of these, start new pieces, and I know it's a lot of work, and I know you don't have a lot of time, but like I said before, this is your shot. This piece, I'm a little confused if these are detail shots. I'm kind of, maybe they're not detailed. No, I guess they're not. Okay. So, all right, these are sections of the piece. I mean, I think it's a little awkward that you have this kind of format, like these three kind of windows and then the big piece here. I mean, I wonder if it's just that you need to get rid of all this blaring white background. Again, you know, that white background is killing you right now. And, you know, in here, I think, again, this white background too. This piece you might consider cropping. I know it's kind of painful to take a pair of scissors to your work, but, you know, if you just cropped down here, it would save you some room. I would fill in the background with more watercolor. Again, this is kind of similar to that pieces with the metallic fish at the beginning of the portfolio, that you've really separated the ballpoint pen from the watercolor, and they're on their own, they're very beautiful, but they look like they're just kind of thrown together. They don't have a lot of relationship. So I'd love to see the watercolor kind of penetrate the other sections of this piece, you know, put some really light yellow going through here, put in some orange here. I know that feels kind of weird to put the watercolor right on top of the graphite, but that's where the most interesting parts of this piece lie. Like, for example, this, you know, wing here I think is very beautiful on top of the yellow and the orange, and I'd love to see more of that transparency throughout the piece. So I think if you fill the white background, you integrate the watercolor better with the pencil, I mean the ballpoint pen, I think you'll be in better shape. This piece is really worth working on. I think another 2 or 3 hours you could definitely get it together. This piece, Graphite Portrait, again, it shows your incredible attention to detail, but compositionally it's not great. The fact that the face is dead center, it's pretty much a symmetrical composition. Again, blaring white background with nothing going on. You know, I really think you might, again, take a pair of scissors to this. You know, if you took this and maybe cropped it here and maybe cropped it here at the top, just minimize that background. It would really make a big difference in this piece, because, you know, if you don't have something really compelling in the background, I think you should break it up or get rid of it entirely. And that's the case here, that your background's taking up so much space and it's not really doing very much. And I'd love you to get more aggressive with the graphite. Like, I like the hair and how dark it is. It seems like you need some of that in the shirt too. So this piece is definitely usable. You just need to spend a little bit more time on and get the composition looking less symmetrical. This piece I would get rid of. I think that I know it's a graphic design piece, but I don't see that it really shows off any of your skills. I mean, the only thing really in here that you made, you know, other than designing the text and everything, is the watercolor. And the watercolor is not particularly interesting, and the graphic design is pretty kind of run-of-the-mill, straightforward. There isn't a lot of innovation in the graphic design. I mean, there's some font changes and some boldness in here, but I don't see a lot happening. I would get rid of this piece. I think it really is pulling down the quality of your portfolio. All right, so this is the 3D piece, and I like that you have a 3D piece, but I think that the photograph is a real problem. The fact that you have this stuff back here, you want the background of a 3D piece to look extremely clean. This is like a gray piece, so I think a white background would be better, and I'm going to send you an article about how to photograph 3D artwork properly. Photographing 3D artwork is a chronic problem for a lot of students. A lot of people don't know how to do it, and so they get photographs that are really kind of sloppy and hard to see. Like, for example, this piece, I like that you have this white back here. I don't like that we can see the table. Like, this horizon line is kind of ugly, and it's a problem that this pole here is taking up so much space. Like, I would go into Photoshop and I would crop this image here. I mean, you can't avoid this going into the sculpture, but you can certainly crop this out. And then there's this random thing back here. I have no idea what that is. You also got to light your sculpture better. This is a better shot. You know, this piece, you have the highlight on this side, the shadow on this side. So this is probably the best shot out of the three that I see, but it still could be better. I still think the contrast could be better. You could light it more strongly, but I think this photograph and this photograph, these are both really problematic. So I'm going to send you a blog post on how to do that. And this piece I do think really needs more time. I mean, you might not have time to do it because 3D work is so time consuming, but what I see in this piece is that you've been really picky about the face. You're going in with this tiny tool and doing these little things, but oops, sorry about that. When I go back and I look at this piece, it's like there's so many incomplete areas. Like, this hand here looks barely sketched in. The body seems like it needs a lot more work. You really got to look at the anatomy. This base, I think, looks really unresolved. 3D work is very difficult. It takes a lot of time, but I think you have the time to do it. I'd really recommend that you spend more time on it, because it's a good start, but you really need to spend more time. So I would say in conclusion that, you know, you're in good shape. You got a lot of good pieces. You obviously are a very hard worker, and you know, you really have a sense of focus and concentration that's really evident looking at your pieces. A couple pieces you need to get rid of. I think there's like 3 or 4 pieces that I recommend that you just flat out remove from your portfolio. I don't know what the required number is for the portfolio, but I think you're better off having fewer pieces that are high quantity than more pieces and include 4 that are really weak. I would definitely get rid of them. If you have time, I would certainly consider doing a couple new pieces from scratch to replace some of those pieces. You got a few that you can rework, and that's great. A few pieces that, you know, another 2 hours, fix some of those glaring white backgrounds, that'll do it. This is all doable, I think. I mean, I know it's like 1 week, but you know, if you just bite the bullet and really spend the time and do that, I think it's really gonna be very beneficial for you to do that.